Most people believe understanding others is about listening harder, asking better questions, or finding the right words. They believe clarity lives inside conversation. But if that were true, misunderstandings would be rare. Relationships would not quietly collapse. Trust would not break after long talks and careful explanations. The uncomfortable truth is simple. Words are the most unreliable part of human communication. People speak to protect themselves, to manage impressions, to avoid discomfort, and to hide uncertainty. Words are shaped by fear, desire, and image. This does not make people dishonest. It makes them human. Real understanding begins in silence. I learned this lesson through someone very close to me, a longtime friend who was thoughtful, intelligent, and deeply empathetic. He cared about people. He listened carefully. Yet he often felt confused, disappointed, and emotionally drained. He trusted promises that were never kept. He believed explanations that never matched behavior. He assumed misunderstanding meant he had failed to communicate clearly enough. Eventually, exhaustion replaced curiosity. Not bitterness, just clarity. He stopped trying to extract truth from conversations. He stopped filling silence with reassurance. He stopped reacting immediately. Instead, he began watching, quietly, patiently, without judgment. And something changed. People revealed themselves without realizing it, not through dramatic confessions, but through small moments. How they behaved when they were challenged, how they responded when they did not get what they wanted, how their body moved before their mouth spoke. In stillness, patterns appeared, and patterns never lie. This audiobook is not about manipulation, tricks, or social games. It is not about controlling others. It is about controlling yourself well enough to see clearly. Because emotional reactivity blinds perception. When emotions lead, observation disappears. You hear what you hope is true instead of what is actually happening. Understanding someone without them saying a word is not a shortcut. It is a discipline. It requires patience, presence, and restraint. It requires the courage to pause instead of explain, to observe instead of react, and to wait instead of demanding clarity. In the chapters ahead, you will learn why behavior always outweighs intention, why silence creates more honesty than confrontation, why emotional energy cannot be faked for long, why reactions under pressure reveal more than polite words ever could, and why the first person you must understand is yourself. My friend did not become colder after learning this. He became steadier. He did not withdraw from people. He stopped chasing validation. He learned to trust what he observed instead of what he was told. And in that space, confusion faded. What replaced it was calm. This audiobook is an invitation to slow down, to listen beyond language, to notice patterns instead of promises. You do not need to read people perfectly. You only need to stay grounded enough to see clearly. If this message resonates with you, share this video with a friend who needs clarity, who feels confused by people, or who is trying to improve their life by understanding others and themselves more deeply, and who may feel stuck, unheard, or emotionally overwhelmed, believing the problem is communication rather than awareness. This audiobook was created for them. Share it as a quiet gesture of support, and let this message reach someone who needs it now and help them take one small step toward a clearer, calmer life they truly deserve. Right now, Chapter 1. Why words lie, but behavior doesn't. Most people are raised to believe that words reveal truth. We are taught to listen carefully, to communicate clearly, and to assume that if someone explains themselves well enough, their intentions must be sincere. But as life unfolds, that belief quietly breaks down. Again and again, people say the right things while doing something entirely different. The confusion that follows is not caused by poor communication. It is caused by trusting language more than reality. Words are not designed to tell the truth. They are designed to manage situations. Human beings speak through layers of protection. Fear, desire, social pressure, and self-image shape every sentence before it leaves the mouth. When honesty feels risky, words soften it. When truth threatens rejection, words delay it. When reality challenges identity, words reframe it. In most cases, this is not intentional manipulation. It is psychological survival. One of the main reasons people say things they do not fully mean is defense. When telling the truth might lead to conflict, disappointment, or loss, the mind automatically edits it. Promises become flexible. Commitments become conditional. Explanations become vague. The words sound reasonable, but they are designed to minimize consequences, not reveal reality. Another powerful reason words mislead is social harmony. Human beings want to belong. We want approval. We want to be liked, so we agree when we are unsure. We are reassured when we feel uncomfortable. We say yes when we mean maybe. These words are spoken to maintain peace, not to express truth. They keep relationships smooth on the surface, while hiding tension underneath. The third reason words lie is image protection. People rarely want to be seen as selfish, uncertain, afraid, or inconsistent. So they speak from the version of themselves they want others to believe in. They describe who they wish they were, not who they are being. This is why words often sound confident while behavior appears hesitant. The mouth serves identity. Behavior serves truth. I learned this lesson clearly through a close friend of mine. He was intelligent, loyal, and deeply sincere. He believed that people meant what they said. When someone promised to show up, he trusted them. When they spoke about care, effort, or commitment, he believed them. Over time, that trust became a source of pain. The pattern repeated itself. People promised support but disappeared when effort was required. They spoke about loyalty but chose convenience. They apologized sincerely, then repeated the same behavior weeks later. Each time, the words sounded convincing. Each time, the outcome stayed the same. At first, he blamed circumstances, then timing, then himself. He wondered if he expected too much or misunderstood intentions. But eventually, something shifted. He stopped asking why people said what they said. He started paying attention to what they actually did. That shift changed everything. He noticed that disappointment was not random. It followed patterns. The same people failed in the same ways. The same excuses appeared after the same outcomes. The gap between words and behavior was not accidental. It was consistent. Instead of arguing with explanations, he began observing repetition. He stopped treating words as promises and started treating behavior as evidence. One broken promise meant nothing. Repeated broken promises meant everything. One kind sentence carried little weight. Consistent absence spoke loudly. This is the first and most important rule of understanding people. Truth does not live in what someone says once. It lives in what they do repeatedly. Behavior costs energy. Words are cheap. Anyone can say the right thing in a moment of emotion or pressure. Very few people can act in alignment over time. Behavior requires effort, sacrifice, and consistency. That is why it is honest. It reveals priorities, not intentions. If you want to understand someone, watch what they do when there is nothing to gain. Watch how they treat people who cannot benefit them. Watch how they behave when convenience competes with commitment. These moments are unedited. They show who someone is beneath their language. For you as the listener, this lesson demands discipline. It means resisting hope when evidence disagrees. It means releasing explanations when behavior remains unchanged. It means accepting what is shown instead of clinging to what is said. To begin practicing this skill, ask yourself 3 simple questions. First, what does this person do consistently, not occasionally? Second, how do they behave when no one is watching or rewarding them? Third, what actions repeat even after apologies, promises, or explanations? You do not need to judge the answers. You do not need to confront anyone. You only need to observe honestly. Understanding people begins the moment you stop negotiating with words and start respecting behavior as the truth. Chapter 2. Body language never lies. If words are shaped by thought, the body is shaped by instinct. Before a person has time to select language, their body has already responded. Muscles tighten or soften. Breathing speeds up or slows down. Posture opens or closes. These reactions happen automatically, without conscious permission. That speed is why body language remains one of the most reliable sources of truth in human interaction. People can rehearse sentences. They cannot fully rehearse their nervous system. The body does not exist to persuade or impress. Its primary role is protection. Long before language, survival depended on physical signals. Danger, safety, dominance, submission, curiosity, and fear were communicated through movement, distance, and tension. That ancient system still operates beneath modern conversation. Even in polite environments, the body reacts first, and truth leaks out in subtle, often unnoticed ways. Most people misunderstand body language because they search for obvious signs. Crossed arms, avoided eye contact, fidgeting hands. Taken alone, these gestures mean almost nothing. The truth is never found in a single movement. It lives in patterns. This lesson became clear to a close friend of mine as he learned to observe people differently. At first, he tried to interpret individual gestures. When someone crossed their arms, he assumed defensiveness. When someone avoided eye contact, he assumed dishonesty. Often, he was wrong. The real breakthrough came when he stopped labeling gestures and started observing combinations over time. He began noticing how people entered a room, whether their posture appeared relaxed or guarded, whether their body is naturally oriented toward others or subtly away. He noticed changes in breathing when sensitive topics emerged. Shallow breathing often appeared before avoidance or discomfort. He also noticed small adjustments, micro-movements that occurred when someone felt exposed or uncertain. More importantly, he noticed the timing. The body reacts before words arrive. Someone may say they are comfortable, but their shoulders tense a fraction of a second earlier. They may agree verbally, yet their torso leans back instead of forward. That brief delay between physical reaction and spoken reassurance is where honesty lives. Orientation became another powerful signal. People unconsciously turn toward what they value and away from what they resist. Feet angle toward exits when someone wants to leave. Bodies subtly shift away from people they distrust. These movements are rarely intentional. They occur beneath awareness. As my friend grew more observant, he also grew quieter. He stopped interrupting discomfort with reassurance. He allowed silence to remain slightly longer. In that space, bodies spoke clearly. People adjusted posture, released breath, stiffened or softened. Information appeared without confrontation. One of the clearest indicators of truth is congruence. When words and body language align, communication feels natural. When they do not, something feels off, even if you cannot explain why. That sensation is not mystical intuition. It is your brain detecting inconsistency. A relaxed body paired with calm speech suggests alignment. Tension paired with reassurance suggests internal conflict. Rapid speech paired with stillness suggests control. Slow speech paired with restless movement suggests discomfort. These signals are not judgments, they are data. It is important to understand that discomfort does not automatically mean dishonesty. Often, it signals emotion, fear, excitement, pressure, insecurity, or anticipation can all create physical tension. The goal is not to accuse or diagnose. The goal is to understand context. This distinction changed how my friend related to people. He stopped assuming bad intent. Instead, he asked quieter internal questions. What emotion might be present? What pressure is influencing this response? What is the body reacting to right now? As his observation improved, his presence changed. People felt less analyzed and more respected. By speaking less, he learned more. By staying calm, he perceived more clearly. For you as the listener, this practice begins simply. Stop trying to decode people. Start noticing them. When someone speaks, observe their body before fully processing their words. Notice posture, breathing, orientation, and movement. Notice how these elements change when topics shift. Notice what happens when silence appears. Most people reveal more in stillness than in speech. One powerful exercise is the 30-second pause. When a conversation reaches an important moment, allow silence. Do not fill it. Do not explain. Observe. The body will respond. Another essential practice is establishing a baseline. Notice how someone behaves when relaxed and unpressured. That becomes your reference point. Any deviation from that baseline carries information. Without a baseline, signals lose meaning. Remember that body language works through probability, not certainty. One signal means little. A pattern means something. Repetition creates clarity. You do not need to stare or analyze intensely. Calm awareness is enough. The more relaxed you are, the more accurately you perceive others. Tension in you distorts perception. Body language never lies, but it whispers. Those who rush miss it. Those who remain present hear it clearly, without effort, without force, and without needing words to explain what has already been shown. Chapter 3. Energy speaks louder than words. Before a person says anything, you often feel something. A subtle tension, a sense of ease, an unexplained heaviness or lightness in the room. This is not imagination. It is emotional energy, and it speaks long before language arrives. Energy is the emotional state someone carries beneath their behavior. It is revealed through tone, pace, presence, and responsiveness. Unlike words, energy is difficult to fake for long. People can control what they say. They struggle to control how they feel while saying it. Most misunderstandings happen because people ignore this layer. They listen to words while their body senses something different. They feel discomfort but override it with logic. They sense resistance but accept reassurance. Over time, this creates confusion and self-doubt. A close friend of mine lived in this contradiction for years. He often said, "Something feels off, but I don't know why." When people spoke kindly, he dismissed the tension he felt as overthinking. When promises sounded sincere, he ignored the unease in his body. He trusted words more than energy, and it cost him clarity. Energy is not mystical, it is observable. It appears in responsiveness, emotional availability, and consistency. Someone may speak warmly, but their energy feels distant. They may say they care, but their presence feels rushed. They may agree verbally, but their emotional engagement feels absent. The nervous system detects these mismatches instantly. One of the first shifts my friend made was learning to separate emotion from story. Instead of asking what someone meant, he asked what he felt around them. Did he feel calm or tense? Open or guarded? Energized or drained? These sensations were not judgments, they were signals. He noticed that some people consistently left him feeling unsettled, even after pleasant conversations. Others left him feeling grounded, even without much dialogue. The difference was not what was said, it was how the interaction felt at a nervous system level. Energy reveals intention before behavior does. When someone is genuinely aligned, their energy is steady. There is coherence between their tone, timing, and attention. When someone is conflicted, pressured, or insincere, their energy fluctuates. They may speak warmly, but withdraw emotionally. They may be enthusiastic, then suddenly distant. These shifts are difficult to conceal because they are driven by internal state, not conscious choice. Another important insight my friend learned was the difference between borrowed energy and authentic energy. Borrowed energy is performative. It spikes briefly, then collapses. Authentic energy is stable. It does not need to impress. It remains consistent over time. This is why some people feel excited but unreliable, while others feel calm but trustworthy. Excitement is easy to generate temporarily. Stability is not. As he became more sensitive to energy, my friend also learned to regulate his own. He realized that emotional reactivity distorted perception. When he was anxious, everything felt threatening. When he was hopeful, red flags felt smaller. Energy perception requires inner stillness. This is why understanding others always begins with self-control. If your emotional state is chaotic, you cannot accurately read anyone. You project, you interpret, you guessed it. Calm creates clarity. Grounded presence allows perception without distortion. For the listener, this means learning to check inward before reading outward. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Is this emotion coming from me or from the interaction? This simple pause separates intuition from projection. Another key practice is noticing consistency. Energy does not lie over time. A single interaction can be misleading. Repeated exposure reveals the truth. Someone who consistently brings tension into your space is communicating something, whether they intend to or not. It is also important to observe how energy shifts under pressure. Stress reveals emotional patterns quickly. Some people become withdrawn. Others become controlling. Others become erratic. These shifts are far more revealing than calm conversation. My friend began noticing that when expectations increased, certain people's energy changed dramatically. Warmth became impatience. Presence became absent. These were not accidents. They were expressions of internal limits. Understanding this allowed him to adjust expectations without resentment. Energy also reveals boundaries. When someone feels violated, rushed, or uncomfortable, their energy contracts. When they feel respected, it expands. These responses are automatic. Observing them helps you navigate interactions more skillfully. Importantly, energy awareness is not about labeling people as good or bad. It is about alignment. Some energies clash, some complements. Understanding this prevents unnecessary conflict and self-blame. For you, as the listener, the practice is subtle but powerful. Begin noticing how people make you feel before analyzing why. Notice your body during interactions. Notice your breathing, tension, and focus afterward. These signals are information. Do not rush to conclusions. Let patterns form. Over time, energy becomes unmistakable. Words can be rehearsed, behavior can be delayed. Energy leaks immediately. Those who learn to sense it stop being confused by people. They stop doubting their perceptions. They stop arguing with what they feel. Energy speaks louder than words because it cannot hide for long. When you learn to listen to it calmly, without fear or projection, understanding becomes natural, quiet, and reliable. Chapter 4. Silence is a test. Silence makes most people uncomfortable. Not because silence is empty, but because silence removes control. When words stop, there is nothing to hide behind. No explanations, no charm, no distractions. What remains is raw presence, and presence reveals far more than speech ever could. Silence is not the absence of communication, it is pressure. Human beings are conditioned to fill gaps. When conversation pauses, the nervous system interprets it as risk. Am I being judged? Did I say something wrong? Do I need to clarify? Do I need to fix this moment? That internal tension pushes people to speak, often revealing more than they intended. This is why silence is one of the most reliable tests of truth. A close friend of mine learned this accidentally. He used to rush to fill quiet moments. When conversation slowed, he explained more. When someone hesitated, he reassured them. When uncertainty appeared, he smoothed it over. He believed silence was awkward and unkind. Over time, he realized something important. Every time he filled the silence, he robbed himself of information. When he stopped doing that, everything changed. The first time he consciously chose silence, it felt unnatural. He asked a simple question and then waited. He resisted the urge to explain why he was asking. He resisted the urge to soften the moment. The silence stretched longer than expected. The other person shifted, laughed nervously, then spoke again. And what they said next was far more honest than what they had said before. Silence had done the work. Silence creates psychological pressure because it removes social scripts. Most people rely on predictable conversational patterns to stay safe. Silence breaks that pattern. It forces the nervous system to respond. and nervous system responses are rarely polished. Some people talk more. Some deflect. Some become defensive. Some reveal insecurity. Some grow irritated. None of these reactions are planned. They are reflexive. This is why silence reveals character. When someone is comfortable with themselves, silence does not threaten them. They remain steady. When someone is hiding something, silence feels dangerous. They rush to fill it. When someone seeks approval, silence feels like rejection. They over-explain. When someone craves control, silence frustrates them. My friend began using silence intentionally, not as a tactic, but as a space. He stopped answering immediately. He stopped reassuring me prematurely. He stopped rescuing conversations from discomfort. And in that space, patterns emerged. He noticed that certain people could not tolerate silence at all. They filled every gap with words, jokes, or explanations. Others became visibly tense. Others tried to dominate the conversation to regain control. These reactions were not about him. They were about the person's relationship with uncertainty. Silence also exposed incongruence. When someone said they were confident but became restless in silence, the mismatch was obvious. When someone claimed honesty but avoided quiet moments, something was being protected. Silence removed performance. Another important lesson he learned was timing. Silence works best after statements, not during emotional escalation. A calm pause after someone speaks allows their own words to settle. Often, they will continue speaking, correcting, or revealing more. Silence also changes power dynamics. The person who can remain calm in silence is not seeking validation. They are not chasing control. That steadiness shifts the interaction. It invites authenticity or exposes resistance. This does not mean using silence aggressively. Silence is not withdrawal or punishment. It is a presence without interference. The intention matters. Silence used to intimidate creates hostility. Silence used to observe creates clarity. For you, as the listener, learning silence requires restraint. Your impulse will be to explain, to justify, to soften. Resist that impulse gently. Allow a few extra seconds. Let the moment breathe. One simple practice is the 5-second rule. After someone finishes speaking, wait 5 seconds before responding. Observe what happens. Often, they will continue. Often, their second statement is closer to the truth than their first. Another practice is noticing your own discomfort. Silence may trigger anxiety in you. That discomfort is information. If you cannot tolerate silence, you may be seeking approval, certainty, or control. Learning to stay present in silence strengthens self-mastery. Silence also reveals emotional boundaries. When someone feels entitled to your attention, silence irritates them. When someone respects your autonomy, silence does not threaten them. These reactions tell you how others relate to space and respect. Over time, my friend noticed he was no longer confused by people. Silence removed noise. He did not need to ask many questions. People answered them without being asked. Silence is a test because it removes the mask. Those who rely on words to maintain image struggle without them. Those who are grounded remain unchanged. Understanding people does not require interrogation. It requires patience. When you stop rushing to fill silence, you allow truth to surface naturally, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, reliably. Chapter 5. How people react when they don't get what they want. There is a moment that reveals more about a person than any introduction, promise, or explanation ever could. It is the moment when things do not go their way, when expectations are denied, when comfort is removed, when desire meets resistance. How a person reacts in that moment tells you who they really are. Most people behave well when life is cooperating. Kindness is easy when needs are met. Patience feels natural when outcomes are favorable. Words sound generous when nothing is being taken away. But pressure exposes character. Disappointment strips away performance. This is where behavior becomes undeniable. A close friend of mine learned this lesson slowly, through repeated confusion. He noticed that many people in his life appeared supportive, respectful, and agreeable until something did not benefit them. When plans changed, when requests were declined, when expectations were not fulfilled, something shifted. At first, the shift was subtle, a slight coldness, delayed responses, shorter messages, less enthusiasm. Then it became clearer. Irritation disguised as honesty, guilt framed as concern, withdrawal masked as busyness. The words still sounded polite, but the energy and behavior told a different story. This pattern forced him to confront an uncomfortable truth. Some people are kind only when life gives them what they want. Reactions under disappointment are powerful because they bypass intention. In moments of frustration, the nervous system takes over. Emotional habits emerge. Entitlement, resentment, avoidance, manipulation, or maturity all surface naturally. These reactions are not calculated. They are automatic. That is why they are honest. Some people react to disappointment with curiosity. They ask questions. They seek understanding. Some react with grace. They accept boundaries without punishment. Others react with pressure, guilt, anger, or withdrawal. Each response reveals how a person relates to control, respect, and emotional responsibility. My friend began paying close attention to these moments. Not dramatically, quietly. When someone did not get what they wanted from him, he watched what happened next. Did they respect his decision, or did they push? Did they adjust calmly, or did they become distant? Did they express disappointment directly, or did it leak out indirectly? He noticed that reactions mattered far more than requests. One of the most revealing behaviors was how people handled boundaries. When he said no to something he previously said yes to, some people responded with understanding. Others responded with subtle punishment. Silence replaced warmth. Distance replaced connection. These reactions were not accidents. They were expressions of entitlement. Disappointment reveals whether someone values you as a person or as a resource. This realization was painful at first. It challenged his hope. It forced him to see relationships more clearly. But clarity replaced confusion. He stopped personalizing reactions. He stopped explaining himself repeatedly. He stopped feeling guilty for having limits. Instead, he observed. He noticed that emotionally mature people could hold disappointment without making it someone else's problem. They might feel frustrated, but they did not weaponize it. They did not manipulate. They did not withdraw affection as punishment. They stayed consistent. Others could not tolerate frustration at all. Their behavior changed immediately. Tone sharpened, presence disappeared. Support became conditional. These reactions exposed emotional immaturity, regardless of how articulate or kind their words usually were. For the listener, this chapter holds a critical lesson. If you want to understand someone, do not watch how they treat you when you are useful. Watch how they treat you when you say no. Pay attention to behavior after disappointment, not during negotiation. The truth appears afterward. Does respect remain? Does communication stay clear? Does warmth return, or does tension linger? Another important observation is timing. Some people react instantly, others react later. Delayed reactions are just as revealing. A polite response followed by subtle distancing still communicates something. Behavior does not need to be dramatic to be meaningful. My friend also learned to separate emotional expression from emotional responsibility. Feeling disappointed is human. Making others pay for it is a choice. Mature people own their emotions. Immature people outsource them. This distinction helped him stop excusing harmful behavior. He stopped saying they didn't mean it or they were just stressed. Stress reveals patterns. It doesn't create them. Understanding this also changed how he handled his own disappointment. He began practicing emotional ownership. When things did not go his way, he noticed his impulses. The urge to withdraw, the urge to explain, the urge to pressure. By observing himself, he became less reactive, more grounded. This is important because understanding others requires integrity within yourself. If you punish people for disappointing you, You will misread others doing the same. Self-awareness sharpens perception. For you as the listener, this chapter offers a powerful practice. The next time you set a boundary, observe carefully. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. Watch what happens after. Watch consistency. Watch effort. Watch tone over time. Ask yourself quietly, does this person respect limits or do they resist them? Do they communicate disappointment cleanly or indirectly? Do they remain themselves or do they become someone else? You do not need to confront. You do not need to accuse. Observation is enough. Reactions under disappointment are not random. They reveal how someone handles power, frustration, and emotional responsibility. They show whether connection is mutual or conditional. When you stop ignoring these moments, understanding becomes simple. Not easy, but clear. People show you who they are when they don't get what they want. The only question is whether you are willing to see it. Chapter 6. Patterns over moments. One of the most common ways people stay confused about others is by focusing on moments instead of patterns. A single apology, a single kind gesture, a single good conversation. Moments feel powerful because they are emotional. Patterns feel quieter because they require time and patience to see. But truth lives in patterns, not moments. A moment can be accidental. A pattern is intentional, even if unconscious. Most people judge others by isolated events. They remember the one time someone showed up, not the 10 times they did not. They focus on the one heartfelt explanation, not the repeated behavior that followed it. This is not because they are foolish. It is because hope is louder than evidence. My close friend struggled with this for a long time. Whenever someone disappointed him, he would recall earlier moments when they seemed sincere. He would tell himself they were having a bad week, or a difficult phase, or that things would be different next time. Each moment became an excuse to ignore the larger picture. Eventually, the emotional exhaustion forced him to stop defending people against their own behavior. He began doing something simple but uncomfortable. He started tracking patterns mentally, not obsessively, not with bitterness, just honestly. What actually repeats over time? What always seems to happen after apologies? What follows promises? What never seems to change no matter how many conversations occur? What he saw was undeniable. Some people always arrived late but apologized beautifully. Some always disappeared during difficulty and returned during calm. Some always promised growth but never changed behavior. These were not coincidences. They were patterns. Patterns reveal priorities. Anyone can act differently once. Few people can act differently consistently. Consistency requires internal alignment. It requires effort without immediate reward. That is why patterns are truthful. They expose what someone is willing to sustain. One of the most painful realizations for my friend was understanding that good intentions do not override repeated behavior. Someone may truly want to change. They may sincerely regret their actions. But if behavior stays the same, impact stays the same. Intent explains behavior. It does not excuse it. This realization freed him from endless emotional labor. He stopped analyzing tone. He stopped searching for hidden meanings. He stopped replaying conversations. Instead, he asked a simpler question. What is the pattern here? That question removed confusion instantly. Patterns also protect you from emotional manipulation. Some people rely on emotional peaks to distract from behavioral consistency. They create powerful moments of connection to compensate for long stretches of absence. These moments feel intense, meaningful, and convincing. But intensity is not reliable. Consistency is reliability. My friend noticed that some relationships felt dramatic but unstable. Others felt calm and predictable. The calm ones did not require constant interpretation. They did not create anxiety. They did not force him to guess. That contrast taught him something crucial. Peace is not boring. It is clear. Patterns also reveal limits. When someone repeatedly fails in the same way, it shows where their capacity ends. That does not make them bad. It makes them human. but ignoring those limits creates suffering. For example, someone who repeatedly avoids difficult conversations is unlikely to suddenly become emotionally available. Someone who consistently prioritizes convenience over commitment is unlikely to change without deep internal work. Seeing this allows you to adjust expectations instead of waiting for transformation. Another important insight is that patterns appear most clearly when nothing dramatic is happening. Pay attention to ordinary behavior. How someone communicates during normal weeks, how they respond without crisis or excitement. The mundane reveals character more than the extreme. My friend stopped being impressed by rare gestures and started valuing steady presence. He realized that reliability felt quiet. It did not demand attention, it simply existed. For you as the listener, learning to see patterns requires emotional discipline. You must resist the urge to reset your judgment after every apology. You must stop treating exceptions as proof. Exceptions are noise. Patterns are signals. A useful practice is the 3-cycle rule. Notice what happens across at least 3 similar situations. 1 instance means nothing. 2 suggested possibilities. 3 reveals direction. After 3 repetitions, behavior is no longer accidental. Another practice is separating explanation from observation. You can understand why someone behaves a certain way while still accepting that the behavior exists. Compassion does not require denial. Patterns also apply to yourself. If you repeatedly feel anxious around someone, that is a pattern. If you repeatedly feel drained after interactions, that is information. Your body tracks patterns even when your mind resists them. This chapter is not about judging people harshly. It is about seeing clearly. Clear sight allows healthy boundaries. It allows realistic expectations. It prevents resentment. My friend learned that when he respected patterns, he stopped feeling betrayed. Betrayal comes from expecting someone to be different than they consistently show themselves to be. When you accept patterns, disappointment decreases. People are not mysteries when you stop focusing on moments. They are remarkably consistent. The question is not whether patterns exist, it is whether you are willing to acknowledge them. Understanding people becomes simple when you stop negotiating with isolated events and start trusting repetition. Patterns do not lie. They do not argue. They simply continue. And once you learn to see them, confusion has nowhere left to hide. Chapter 7. Control yourself first. Before you can understand anyone else, there is one skill that must come first. Control yourself. Not control as suppression, but control as steadiness. Because the greatest obstacle to understanding people is not their behavior. It is your emotional reaction to it. When emotions take over, perception collapses. Most people believe confusion comes from lack of information. In reality, confusion comes from emotional interference. Hope distorts signals. Fear amplifies threat. Desire fills gaps with fantasy. When you are emotionally invested in an outcome, you stop observing and start interpreting. You no longer see what is happening. You see what you want or fear to be happening. A close friend of mine learned this lesson painfully. He thought his problem was misunderstanding others. In truth, his problem was reacting too quickly. When he cared, he rushed. When he hoped, he ignored signs. When he feared loss, he over-explained. His emotions spoke louder than reality. Once he realized this, everything shifted. He began paying attention not to other people first, but to himself. He noticed how his body reacted during conversations. Tight chest, fast thoughts, urge to justify, urge to fix. These impulses were not signs of insight, they were signs of emotional activation. Emotional activation narrows attention. It creates tunnel vision. You focus on relief instead of truth. You seek reassurance instead of clarity. You chase resolution instead of understanding. This is why emotionally reactive people misread others so often. When you are calm, you observe. When you are triggered, you project. My friend began practicing one simple discipline. He slowed himself down internally. When he felt urgency, he paused. When he felt the need to explain, he waited. When he felt anxiety rising, he said nothing. This was uncomfortable at first. Silence felt risky. Stillness felt unnatural. But over time, something remarkable happened. Clarity increased. Without emotional noise, patterns became visible. Without urgency, reactions softened. Without attachment to outcomes, behavior spoke clearly. People did not change. His perception did. Self-control does not mean emotional numbness. It means emotional regulation. It means allowing emotions to exist without letting them drive behavior. You can feel disappointment without reacting. You can feel hope without abandoning discernment. You can feel fear without surrendering judgment. This internal discipline creates space, and in that space, understanding becomes possible. One of the most important things my friend learned was to separate feelings from facts. Feelings are internal signals. Facts are external patterns. When feelings dominate, facts are ignored. When facts dominate without empathy, relationships collapse. Balance requires self-mastery. He also learned that the need to be liked is one of the greatest enemies of perception. When approval matters too much, you will misinterpret behavior to preserve connection. You will excuse inconsistency. You will ignore disrespect. You will rationalize absence. Self-control breaks this cycle. By grounding himself internally, my friend no longer needed immediate validation. He could tolerate uncertainty. He could allow silence. He could let people reveal themselves over time without interference. Another crucial lesson was learning to regulate expectations. Expectations are emotional contracts we create silently. When they are unmet, emotions flare. But expectations formed without evidence are fantasies. Self-control means basing expectations on patterns, not hopes. This reduced resentment dramatically. For you as the listener, this chapter may be uncomfortable because it asks you to take responsibility for your reactions. It asks you to stop blaming confusion on others and start examining your emotional habits. Ask yourself honestly, when do I lose clarity? When do I rush to explain? When do I ignore signs? These moments reveal where control is missing. One powerful practice is the internal pause. When you feel emotional charge, pause internally before responding. Do nothing for a few seconds. Observe your impulse. Let it pass. Most impulses dissolve when not acted upon. Another practice is detachment from outcome. This does not mean apathy. It means curiosity without an agenda. When you are not trying to get something from an interaction, you see it more clearly. Calm is not passive. It is powerful. People who are calm are difficult to manipulate. They are difficult to confuse. They are difficult to provoke into mistakes. Their steadiness creates psychological gravity. Others adjust around them. My friend noticed this shift clearly. Conversations changed. People spoke more carefully. Boundaries were respected more often. Not because he demanded it, but because his energy no longer invited chaos. Self-control also protects compassion. When you are regulated, you can see others clearly without resentment. You understand limitations without bitterness. You accept reality without cruelty. This is the foundation of real understanding. You cannot read people accurately if you are desperate, fearful, or attached. You can only read them when you are steady. Understanding others begins with mastering yourself. Calm is not a weakness. It is clear, and clarity is the lens through which all truth becomes visible. Chapter 8. How to use understanding without manipulating. Understanding people is powerful, and power, when misunderstood, easily turns into manipulation. This chapter exists to draw a clear line, not a moral lecture, but a grounding reminder. The goal of understanding others is not control. It is clear, not advantage, but alignment. Not domination, but peace. When people first realize they can read behavior, energy, silence, and patterns, a temptation appears. The temptation to use insight to steer outcomes, to predict reactions, to push subtle buttons, to stay one step ahead. This temptation is natural. but it leads to emptiness. Manipulation creates short-term wins and long-term damage. A close friend of mine encountered this temptation briefly. As his awareness sharpened, he noticed how easily he could influence conversations by withholding words, timing silence, or adjusting presence. At first, it felt empowering. He felt smarter, safer, less vulnerable. But something felt wrong. The interactions lost warmth. The connection felt strategic. Trust felt fragile. That discomfort taught him the final lesson of understanding people. Insight without integrity corrodes you from the inside. Understanding is meant to reduce friction, not create leverage. Manipulation relies on hidden agendas. It treats people as variables instead of humans. Even when subtle, it erodes self-respect. Because on some level, you know you are not being honest with your intention. True understanding does the opposite. It simplifies relationships. It reduces the need to explain, convince, or persuade. It allows you to meet people where they are, not where you want them to be. The difference lies in intent. If your intent is control, you will use insight to constrain others. If your intent is clarity, you will use insight to choose wisely. My friend learned to ask himself one question whenever he felt the urge to influence. Am I trying to protect myself, or am I trying to control the situation? Protection honors boundaries. Control violates them. Protection looks like stepping back when patterns are clear. Control looks like staying and managing outcomes. This distinction changed how he used his understanding. Instead of trying to guide people toward better behavior, he adjusted his own position. Instead of confronting inconsistencies, he reduced exposure. Instead of testing people, he trusted patterns. Understanding became a filter, not a weapon. Another important boundary is emotional consent. Just because you can read someone does not mean you should act on everything you see. Insight does not obligate intervention. Sometimes the most respectful choice is silence. He also learned that manipulation often begins with self-deception. Telling yourself you are helping when you are actually avoiding discomfort. Telling yourself you are guiding when you are actually controlling. Honesty with self prevents misuse of insight. For the listener, this chapter invites reflection. Why do you want to understand people? To feel safe? To avoid pain? To connect better? Or to feel superior? Only one of these leads to peace. Using understanding ethically means letting go of the need to change others. People change when they choose to, not when they are exposed. Insight allows you to decide where to invest energy, not how to remodel personalities. Another sign of ethical use is calm. Manipulation creates tension. Ethical understanding creates relief. When you are aligned, there is less effort, not more. Fewer words, fewer explanations, fewer emotional swings. My friend noticed that as he stopped trying to influence outcomes, relationships clarified naturally. Some deepened, others faded. Both outcomes felt clean. Understanding also strengthens boundaries. When you see patterns clearly, you do not need dramatic exits or confrontations. You simply adjust access. Boundaries become quiet, consistent, and unemotional. This is a form of respect for yourself and for others. It is also important to remember that understanding does not mean agreement. You can understand someone's behavior without tolerating it. You can empathize without enabling. Clarity supports firmness. Another ethical guideline is humility. No matter how skilled you become, you will never see everything. People are complex. Context matters. Overconfidence leads to misinterpretation. Staying curious prevents arrogance. Understanding is a practice, not a position. For you as the listener, the invitation is simple. Use insight to reduce suffering, not to gain advantage. Use clarity to choose better environments, not to control unstable ones. Use understanding to protect your peace, not to feed your ego. When you do this, something subtle but profound happens. You stop feeling the need to prove anything. You stop chasing reactions. You stop managing impressions. You become steady, and steadiness is what people trust most. Understanding people without them saying a word is not about being smarter than others. It is about being honest with yourself, calm enough to see, strong enough to walk away, respectful enough to let others be who they are. When understanding is guided by integrity, it does not isolate you, it grounds you. It does not harden you, it frees you. That is the final lesson. You have just completed a quiet journey, not a journey of techniques or tricks, but a journey of awareness. From words to behavior, from gestures to energy, from silence to patterns, from emotional reaction to self-control, and finally, to integrity. Each chapter was not meant to make you sharper than others, but steadier within yourself. Understanding people without them saying a word is not about suspicion. It is about clarity. It is about no longer needing explanations that never match behavior. It is about no longer arguing with reality. When you see clearly, confusion fades. When confusion fades, peace replaces it. Think again about the friend whose story appeared throughout this audiobook. He did not become distant or cold. He did not stop caring. He simply stopped forcing understanding from places where it did not exist. He learned to observe first, react later, and speak only when clarity was present. That shift did not change other people. It changed his inner state, and that is the real transformation. When you stop chasing answers from others, you begin listening to yourself. When you stop explaining, you start choosing. When you stop reacting, you regain dignity. This is not emotional withdrawal. It is emotional maturity. You are no longer trying to be understood by everyone. You are trying to live in alignment with what you see. You do not need to control the world. You do not need to read every intention perfectly. You only need to control how you interpret, respond, and decide. When you do that, people reveal themselves naturally, without confrontation, without pressure, without games. The effort you once spent analyzing words can now be invested in living calmly and choosing wisely. Clarity simplifies life. It removes emotional noise. It reduces inner arguments. It allows you to stop chasing closure from people who cannot offer it. When understanding becomes quiet, your energy returns to you. You sleep better. You think slower. You trust yourself more. For the next 72 hours, try a simple challenge. On the first day, pause before reacting. When something triggers you, do nothing immediately. Observe your impulse without obeying it. Let the moment pass without explanation. On the second day, separate emotion from fact. Notice what you feel, then ask what is actually happening in behavior and patterns. Write nothing, say nothing, just see. On the third day, make one clear decision based on observation, not hope. It can be small, a boundary, a pause, a choice to step back, or a choice to engage with more intention. These small acts build a calm strength that no words can replace. Over time, this strength becomes your natural state. You stop being surprised by people. You stop doubting your perception. You move with certainty without needing to convince anyone. Remember this truth. You do not need a smarter world. You need a clearer mind. When your mind is clear, people become easy to understand. Not because they change, but because you stop projecting. Clarity is quiet, but its impact is deep. It changes how you walk into rooms, how you listen, how you leave conversations, and how you protect your peace without needing permission, approval, or explanation from anyone else in moments that once felt confusing or overwhelming before. If this audiobook brought clarity to you, do not keep it to yourself. Share this video with a friend who feels confused by people, who struggles in relationships, or who is trying to improve their life by understanding others and themselves more deeply. Sometimes the greatest support is simply passing along the clarity you have found.